Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to this Australia Day special Splendid Isolation stream number 206.
Thank you.
Let me just do my little bit of boomerisms here, guys. Oh, God. Did I do that right? Yes, I did. Okay. As always, I'm going to start us off with a bit of a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace, fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heed and folly, bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come down to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with give or wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all the thankless years.
And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard, True Blue Australian, because this is Australia Day. And yeah, go and check out Chris Gard's channel on YouTube, guys. Don't know what guests we're going to not get today. I can tell you that we do have Bodvar, who is a true blue Aussie. And we may get another Australian or two later on. We shall see. And also my friend Armin is here. How are we going this morning, gentlemen?
Yeah, good, mate.
Excellent. How are you going, Armin?
Yeah, very good.
Good, mate. As always, I like to start off by asking guests if they have a first subject to bring up. And because it's Australia Day, which, by the way, for anyone who is not down under, is the day that the first fleet arrived from Britain in 1788 and started the first settlement in New South Wales, and the civilization of a continent which did not have so much as a road or even really any sort of house on it at all. It was a complete wilderness in 1788. It's quite extraordinary what Australians have done with the country since then. But I'm going to ask Bodvar if he had a first subject for us this morning. How are you going, Bodvar?
Yeah, I didn't know you'd do this, but I think to keep it positive, I can tell you tales of my recent weeks and months actually. About 5 months really, in Van Diemen's Land, where timeline is on the 1980s scale. And yesterday they were unpacking loads of plastic chairs down by the bayside, getting ready this massive event for today. And I saw them all unpacking it yesterday afternoon and the evening. Like, geez, they're really setting up for tomorrow. And it's big in the town I am at in Van Diemen's Land. It's going to be big later on. There's going to be a thing at the local hall, as there was for Memorial Day. And like I said, yeah, it's like being back in the 1980s down here. There's no subversives anywhere that would dare anything today, unlike in Melbourne.
Today. Yeah, not just Melbourne, mate. Melbourne, Sydney, New South Wales. There's been so many attacks on monuments with people chucking paint over statues of Captain Cook and Captain Phillips, who of course was the first governor, Queen Victoria, and they've even been chucking red paint over the Anzac statues this year, which that was too far for them to go until very recently. But now even the Anzac statues are not sacred.
I think just to say quickly, it might not, I don't know if terms what's familiar to the audience, but at this point, not only are the government not labeling them as domestic threats, but they're just straight up accelerationists.
Yeah, they don't even look for people doing this stuff. If you go and vandalize a historic Australian statue, they don't even bother looking for them, as far as I can work out.
Yeah, no, it's quite insane, really, that they're allowed to do this. But as you saw, the woman lady from the Senate got kicked out by the bald fella. Lydia, the queen of the accelerationist Brown Coalition, kicked out for being just like calling him a racist, this sort of stuff. But I do have one little tale to tell since you asked me a subject. I want to tell you something. Mm-hmm. Down here, a man with a German last name just got awarded money because leftists kept calling him a Nazi. Can you believe it?
Well,
yeah, he's like, he's innocent. He's like some guy there's a lot of people with German last names down here. Yep. And some leftists were always at him saying they were going to hit him and calling him a Nazi constantly. He ended up getting awarded $500 for the defamation of being called a Nazi because it was sensitive to him with a German background.
Well, we might get Tim Wilms on here. I don't know, because I know Tim's got an event he's got to go to later. But we might get Tim Wilms from Wilms Fund, who you probably know, Bodvar. And he's, I believe, German extraction, originally his family.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of them, a lot of anthropologists knocking about the countryside as well. So. Yeah, oh well.
But for people who don't know, I mean, on Australia Day, I mean, the traditional thing is that you have a barbecue in the afternoon, and a few beers and some drinks, and it's usually a family time. So you have like your family and friends and lots of kids and all this kind of stuff. That's traditional Australia Day. And of course, the left and a lot of the Aboriginals, not all of them, but some of them, they don't like that at all. They try and call it Invasion Day and all sorts of other bullshit. But the right has been fighting back about this in Australia and, making a big deal of it. But I was hearing rumours just the last couple of days that the Australian government would like to change the day to a different month that has nothing to do with Australia. I mean, it's got nothing. I mean, if you're an American, it's a fine day, but it's not anything to do.
Are you
with
aware
Australia.
of why? You're aware of
I'm
why
not.
they're trying to claim that the Aboriginal crowd of accelerationists claim that the day was chosen as a day of humiliation for them on purpose. The date was chosen as a humiliation ritual intentionally. It's what they claim.
Absolute bullshit, of course. I mean, I saw one of these people that you rightly call accelerationist, Bodvar. One of these idiots was on the mainstream media last week saying that Australia was built on slavery, which is a bit difficult given that Australia has never had legal slavery. Like, slavery was illegal in Australia from the first day the first fleet arrived. It was never legal. So if one country was never built on slavery, it's Australia.
The thing about it is, I'll just say quickly, I'll let Adam have a go, is that in like America and Canada, the populations that they have of Skraelings, and Mitchell liked that word from the Norse term, the First Nations people, they tend to just get stoned and drunk and clumsily go shooting at moose and stuff in Canada. And in America, they're on those reservations and they've got casinos and they're...
Yeah, I think we lost you there, Bodvar. See if
recognizes my
you're back. You're back.
Yeah, you're right. No, I was just going to say the ones in America, the native First Nations, whatever they want to call them these days, they're not, quite frankly, not as mixed as the ones we're dealing with, like the video you saw about the guy talking about slavery. And what it is because they're not mixed as much, they're not as easily weaponized, whereas the ones that are majority Caucasian, as they say, like Lydia Thorpe and co, but have a touch in them, they get weaponized, and then they use their majority white sort of smarts to go on about rewriting stuff about mass graves and massacres. It does happen in Canada a little bit, but not as
oh yeah, I think this is something else that people outside Australia don't realise, that a lot of the so-called Aboriginals in Australia are like anywhere from 5% to 20% Aboriginal. They're not even 50% Aboriginal, It's like, and as Bodvar rightly says, some of these guys were basically white leftists for the most part. They're some of the worst people.
Well, it's comedy. It's actually comedy. Like, there's a television show called Alone where these bushcraft specialists go off to see how long they can survive. They made an Australian version. They had a few that was claiming to be proud Wadadjeri people. I think that's what New South Wales Aborigines call themselves. And but they look, you wouldn't know it. You almost wouldn't know it. And then one of them, you could kind of see it. There was about 3. There was a handful of them. There was only 10 contestants. And all the proud Wadadjeris were the ones that threw the towel in first.
Oh, man, I'm old enough to remember when Australian TV, and also British TV, by the way, had the barefoot bushman, who was, I don't know, probably 50, 60% Aboriginal. Him I could accept, but some of these dudes who claim to be Aboriginal, they're not really much more Aboriginal than I am, It's pretty crazy.
I mean, we should just make it clear for the narrative for the audience about the Dark Emu Pascoe situation, where you have a fella who's like white, long beard, and looks a little bit of a dwarfish, kind of pudgy nose, a little bit of a squash nose. And he could pass for a wizard. He could play Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, this guy. But he says he's got Aboriginal in him. It's unverified, etc. But he wrote this book called Dark Emu that wants to rewrite the framing where Aboriginals did have permanent dwellings and farming methods of yams, apparently, that drifted over from the Americas, mind you. Same in New Zealand. New Zealand yams aren't native. And fish traps and eel traps and all this sort of business. And it's like, even if there were some caves like the Anastasia of America or whatever, like, and some primitive trap of fish, using this comparison on a guns, germs, and steel sort of like competition of comparing it to agriculture and our benchmark of civilization itself. It's kind of pathetic, but it's also untrue, because, you know, they're just trying to say that they weren't as hunter-gatherer and seasonal as they claim to be, and they did have permanent houses sometimes, and they made fish traps, bro.
Well, I think they did make fish traps, but the houses, as far as I understand, were things like paper bark huts. And yeah, all right, they had dugout canoes. They did, no doubt about that. But there wasn't a single road in the whole continent. And there were quite a lot of Aboriginal practices that were, shall we say, feminists wouldn't like them today if they were done by anyone but Aboriginals. So
no, yeah, the hypocrisy with the Palestine leftist, the feminists, all that is the elephant in the room is obviously like Islamic patriarchy, and then Aboriginal patriarchy is a thing as well. So.
Well, I mean, look, Aboriginals are a tiny percentage of modern Australian population, but that tiny percentage produces a significant amount of the so-called violence against women, which the government is always going on about. A significant amount, but you're not allowed to say that.
Speaking of violence, like, I grew up around Aborigines in Darwin at a point. Went to Sydney when I was a teenager, luckily or unluckily, but they're not actually as like instantly like an anthropological sort of like danger sort of moment when you're around them. In fact, in the 80s they were quite pacified, and I'll say that like New Zealand and whatever sort of tribes may be behind weaponization of minorities aren't as effective in New Zealand in weaponizing the Maori against the Anglo. And in Australia, they've been particularly effective. But just recently, things were kind of okay when Malcolm Douglas was hanging out with them in the 80s in his documentaries, and they took him on fishing tours and the wild rivers with crocodiles. And they were working on ranches, and they were, sort of, I'm not like making a coat, but like, they were better behaved. And obviously there's responsibility involved when it comes to alcohol and pornography on our behalf. Just they can't deal with alcohol. But and there's dry places, and then, Alice Springs was dry, and then they said it was racist to keep it, prohibition. So they put alcohol back in, and it turned into Mad Max.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've traveled in the outback, and I've traveled even more extensively in the top end. I mean, I lived in the top end for quite a while. And I know what you're saying there, Bodvar, is entirely true. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting for a second that all Aboriginals are bad, because they're not. I went out with Aboriginal Australian mud crab fishermen up in the Northern Territory. As you say, Aboriginals were sometimes ringers on big cattle stations and stuff like that. I still have a painting that an Aboriginal dude gave me, a traditional Aboriginal painting that an Aboriginal dude gave me. I'm not suggesting for a moment that all of them are bad, but I think kind of what we're getting at here is the Aboriginal guys who are not good are often more white than they are Aboriginal, to tell you the truth.
And they've been weaponized against us by a certain,
Can I ask?
Go.
So I've heard people for years trying to rephrase it as Invasion Day, but when did like the vandalism start? Is this something that's always gone on, or is it?
No, it's pretty recent.
In recent years.
It's pretty recent.
Vandalisms would have started around the height of, the new trendy sort of like, world we inhabit, the rise of, things and like the Trump first rounds. So like 2016, 17, you would have had Captain Cook things around then, as earlier probably. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure
not a lot earlier. Not a lot.
No, but around that period is when it started to get gassed.
I do, look, there's a monument to Royal Australian Navy sailors on the Esplanade in Melbourne, down near where the Australian naval recruiting place used to be. And I used to pass it often because it's near the dog beach. So I used to take my dog down there when I still lived in the middle of Melbourne. And that got vandalized 4 years ago, I think, with with red paint and all this shit, which I reported, and the council went and cleaned it up. But this is a relatively new thing in Australia. It's not something that was happening even in the 1980s, I wouldn't say. I don't think it was even happening in the 80s. This is a relatively new thing in Australia.
Right. And is it another one of these things where it's like...
One second, guys.
It's
I have
like-
to mute for a second. Sorry.
Yeah. Is it one of these things where it's like backed from the top down?
By
You
the
know,
left,
if
it
you-
is.
Yeah. Like if you came out and had a group of people trying to let's say defend a statue, would they be like defamed by the press and possibly
Well,
even arrested by the police?
No, I don't think they would. It's not as bad as that here yet. We had
Right.
some kids actually in Australia last week who were standing guard on a Captain Cook statue. So we had some Australian little white kids who were doing it, and they didn't get into trouble.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's not quite as far gone as England can be sometimes. I mean, if you understand what I mean. But yeah, it's as I say, it's funny because there are plenty of good Aboriginals, but they tend to be more full-blooded Aboriginals who live up in northern Queensland and Arnhem Land and what have you in the territory. The worst guys are the guys who are like 75% white, basically. Which I suppose is no problem, but no surprise because they're the communists, you know.
Yeah.
I will just say again, guys, I have invited other Australians on this stream. Whether they join or not, I can't force people to join the stream, but I have asked them. But it is quite early here for anyone who's not in Australia. Like it's only 8:30 now, so you know it's pretty early in the day. Like I always do, admin will tell you that I always do an Australia Day stream. It just so happened that Australia Day today is on the same day as I do the Splendid Isolation stream anyway. So it made sense to me to combine them. Bolero says, force the Franklin to get on the stream. Mate, I asked the Franklin to join this stream 2 weeks ago and he said he probably can't make it. So
Has he restarted another YouTube channel yet? I haven't.
I don't
seen
think
one.
he has. No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But you know, he's a guy with he's got like 3 kids and stuff, and he runs a he runs a small farm, small holding, whatever you want to call it. So he's a busy guy. I understand that.
Yeah.
But he's got an invitation to the stream, trust me. So has Tim Wilms, as I say. Tim asked me a day or two ago what time I was going to start. And I told him when we were going to start and when we might finish. And I know, like, from lunchtime, Tim's going to be at an event in Melbourne for Australia Day. And if he can't make it, that will be the reason. So, you know.
Yeah.
But it's you know, the attacks on white Australia are basically exactly the same as the attacks that you get against white Americans or white British people. They're exactly the same and mostly from the same sort of people, to be honest.
Yes, I mean, usually like the reflex is to say that most of these places in what people would call the West are sort of down the rabbit hole largely to the same degree. But I don't know. It does sometimes seem like leftists in Australia often seem like more belligerent and more rabid than what we get here.
Sometimes.
I mean,
yeah.
you've seen in America they've just completely dropped off. They're really low on energy. obviously, I mean, I spoke about this at the time, but I was at an event late last year. Well, not late last year, summer last year, late summer. And that was essentially the location, and the event was doxed. And it was on a large university campus, and no one showed up. Not a single person showed up to counter us in any way. And yet you do seem to see more in sort of like more aggressive political activist groups. Aggressive is the wrong word, but more out there political activist groups like, what is it, the NSN and stuff like that. That you'll see they'll get counted everywhere they go. You'll see like sort of like the sort of like dysgenic freaks that you might imagine in Southport popping up in like Melbourne and like committing petty assault against someone and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. It seems like a weird political landscape.
It's different to England. I would say, the Australian nationalism is a fair bit behind where it is in England.
Yeah.
There are good nationalists. I mean, Bodvar's a good nationalist. People know Bodvar, who's also known as Biaki. He's a good Australian nationalist, but it's not as common as it is in Britain. It's getting there, but it's much slower, partly because the good life in Australia continued longer than it did in Britain,
Yeah.
It's not there now. Australia has exactly the same problems as Britain and other countries. The young people can't afford to buy a house because of constant mass immigration. You can't build enough houses for these people, especially in a country like Australia, which has got it's got a water problem. In the middle of Australia is like desert and semi-desert for the most part. And so it's only really the coastal areas which are habitable, really, unless you want to run like a sheep station or a cattle station, but you can't put many people on that land. And so there are limits to how many people Australia can support, even though it's a huge place. Like it's as big as the continental United States, but 2/3 of it is not really habitable for large numbers of people. And they still want to bring in constant mass fur-borne immigration from all the usual places that they do the same thing in the rest of the West. But I'll ask Bodvar on that one.
So, sorry, I just got back. I had someone come up to me. I'm outside a public library using the Wi-Fi on my laptop. Anyway, I was going to say, I just got back, so I heard you talking about farming. It's like seeing in South Africa, they talk about how the others can't really farm, and the white man is like good at farming. Well, Australia, the IQ and the intelligence involved in farming to deal with the fact that it's inhospitable sort of like land is like extensive. They've got certain trees they plant to desalinate the land. I think it's acacias and like all sorts of strategies to make it viable. That's like, like white man shit that others just can't farm Australia without, it's like ecological imperialism.
A lot of specialist skills. Yes, I know this is true. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's like imperialism of Australia wasn't just, dominating the lands, like literally dominating the land and making it suitable. And as I think you mentioned on your first fleet stream, the original sort of they didn't find land to farm until when they went further out west and they had to hunt and barely survived in the beginning because the sandy soils near the bay are not good like they were further in.
Yep. 100%. They did have they came close to famine at one stage. So yeah.
It's the same down here, that the soil near the coast is all shitty and sandy, and then inland it's very rich. I'm actually really impressed with how many European weeds are here for my old world bushcraft skills. It's great, there's all nettles and burdock. It's great.
Yeah, in Victoria, we've got South African daisies, yellow South African daisies all over the place. And people claim they got here via the fodder for horses during the Anglo-Boer War, but I don't know how that happened, but that's what they claim. So maybe.
You know that video where I shot the video of the platypus. Well, there was
Oh
like
yeah,
a little rock.
yeah.
There was a little rock island in the middle of that stream that I was hopped onto, and there was a bloody dandelion in the middle of a exotic rainforest-looking national park on a rock. And I just looked down at this bloody dandelion. I'm like, ecological imperialism. You gotta love it.
I will just say that Bodvar has some nice videos of spotted quolls.
But it's friends only. It's friends
Oh,
only.
okay.
It's
Oh,
only
okay.
4 subs. You can go to 5. No, I'm just joking. This time it's friends only. I think there is some friends in the chat though. I'll have a look.
Yeah, but Bodvar has some excellent videos of spotted quolls, which are sometimes called like a native cat, although they're actually obviously a marsupial, and also for duck-billed plovers, which is a really typical Australian animal, I suppose. But yeah,
Typical, but you don't see them. I can only see one friend in the chat. That's a chat's Tricky Woo. So Tricky Woo.
Yeah, I saw Tricky Woos in them.
We're basically from different circles, aren't we? But that's okay. We're all Anglos and Aussies and etc. And I kind of loosely know Adam from old days who used to hang out with some other people. Isn't that right, Adam? But anyway, I see now. I shouldn't bring it up. Anyway, let's just say there's other weirdo streamers in the Anglo stream that I sometimes go around and make trouble with. So I don't make trouble with you, though, Duke. So.
No, you're a good guy. I mean, just to let people know, Bodvar was out of Australia for quite a while and has only fairly recently returned. So
yeah, so I'm not that true blue. They call me a traitor, but the thing is I was going to tell you a little bit more about being down here. So it's not just the RSL, but you'll like this, Duke. I'll tell you quickly. This RSL, which is like a veterans and citizens club, where you go and have your pub, bistro, standard meals, roast of the day, and all that sort of stuff. I was looking. I wanted to tell you, Duke. There was all these coasters, a big stack of them for Vietnam Veterans Day, Battle of the Long Tan. They're going to do in August. I just saw this stack of coasters for Vietnam Memorial Day, and I just thought I had to tell you that. Like, what a place where you can walk in and there's just like all sorts of memorabilia for war stuff. You'd love it, Duke. You'd absolutely love it. The murals, that's massive murals of Anzacs.
Yeah, loads of RSLs are worth visiting because quite a lot of them have little museums and stuff attached to them. And the RSL, for anyone who's not in Australia, is the Returned Servicemen's League, and it was started after World War One when the Anzacs came back from Gallipoli and the Western Front and all that stuff, and then carried on after World War II. And I'm happy to hear what Bodvar says, because for a while it was a sad fact that the Vietnam vets from Australia who fought in Vietnam weren't originally all that accepted by some of the World War II and World War One guys, like the older guys, but these days they pretty much run the RSL because the guys who are still alive. So
Yeah, well, for Memorial Day, there was a big military biker club in town, like hundreds of bikes. Military veterans MC. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like a veteran MC club.
Well, I can believe that, because there was a lot of guys who did their military service and ended up joining biker clubs and what have you, partly because it was a substitute for the mateship in the military.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that down here, but there's no Nike bikies at Lebanese and Nike trainers and Adidas trainer accounts and the Ducatis and Aprilias.
Before we go on, Bodvar, we're going to talk a little bit later on about the grooming gangs in Britain, and also the African guy who killed those 3 little girls in Britain. But one of the things I don't think many people outside Australia realise is that Australia also has issues with grooming gangs. If you wanted to talk about that in general terms, of course.
Well, I actually have something. Well, I have to say something that's like kind of like a yo-yo in our circles, and it's getting a bit frustrating. Like, obviously, we've got the TR crowd that is like, oh, just a fucking ideology, innit, bro? Don't like the ideology, but as long as you're, so the issues with the ideology, like what in Britain and that, and they have similar types like in Sweden and places like that. In Sweden, mind you, is undergoing like daily domestic terrorism because it's like bombings going on in buildings like just a few days ago. It's like they're literally like at war in Sweden. I don't think Britain has that level of buildings getting taken out and that sort of stuff just yet. But,
no, we don't get quite so many grenades.
Yes, but so it's like the thing is the same narrative over there is it's just the ideology, it's the other. But even though that's like a big like sort of hurdle for us to get people past. Because obviously all, like with the Afghanis that bashed the lifeguard in Australia the other day as well, all the locals are like, why are these people here?
Oh, I saw.
Criminals.
Yeah, I saw that. Loads of Afghans beat up a young lifeguard at a swimming pool. I saw that. Yeah, I did.
Well, so it's like, but so the thing is like, when the TR crowd and it's the ideology, brother, just got a problem with the ideology. But the problem is, the elephant in the room is that actually, yes, like that is like a major issue, not where we need to be like them and not look past it to other reasons of backgrounds. But it is a big problem because it's like the Lebanese situation in Sydney that was going on basically from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s in terms of like that decade where it was hot and heavy, and a little thing called a race riot in the Shire, Cronulla riot, sort of put a stop to it.
I remember that, mate. Yeah, I remember the Cronulla riots, and it was more than one; it was a few.
Well, that kind of put a stop to it being so blatant and so common. But having been in Sydney and West Sydney and elsewhere in those times, I tell you that what it is they drove around at night time, especially in affluent WASP areas like on the North Shore. They drive all the way from out west to like rich areas in the Sydney's North Shore to find parties on Friday nights, Saturday nights, and just gate crash and bash the white kids and have their way with the white girls,
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of them were also groomed with the drugs. So it's like, girls with a lot of money that may be depressed and a bit rebellious got on heroin from these gangs, and then ended up, addicted. And so it's like a lot of shameful things that they didn't want people knowing about. So the cases that made light, which you can talk about one of them later, are ones that sort of got exposed in the actual Western areas. And it's like the tip of the iceberg in terms of the scale of what the Middle Easterns are up to in the 90s in terms of sexual predation on Anglo girls. There was other more pressing issues, which was the crime itself, which is why the feds created MEOC, Middle Eastern Organized Crime Unit. And so that them in skirmishes with other ethnicities, mainly Vietnamese, over drug turf, was more of an issue for feds than what they were doing to our girls.
Yeah, there's areas in Melbourne, that are Vietnamese, and there's other areas which are more Middle Eastern and Lebanese, shall we say? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's like, to comment on, like, it's like the unfortunate truth is that when they call it grooming in Britain, is that like sometimes, as we know, like some of these girls are like, not doing the best in life and their socioeconomic status or whatever. And some of them do get butted up by these boys.
And some of them are like 10 and 11. Some of them are 10 and 11 years old.
So unfortunately, we have to admit that sometimes the girls are sort of like lured in at first. And it's similar in Sydney.
But some of them are also very young. Some of them are very young. They're 10, 11.
Yes, exactly. But there was an element of like certain girls that would sort of like be tricked into getting in with the
100%, mate. 100%.
100%. And so the thing with these these guys with the fast cars and spiky hair and gold chains and black hairy chests and going to clubs and this is sort of whatever, but it's like some girls like hung out with them before you know it. Girls or even mid-teens ended up waking up one morning and realizing that all their other mates had to go. So what was that about last night? You let all your mates have a go when I was drunk. And it's like, and then it starts, and then before you know it, so they don't want the shame of it coming out that the boy that they were dating, basically started to hold them out.
which is
And
not uncommon. Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Look, if you've got relatively a lot of money and you've got loads of alcohol and loads of drugs, and you drive a flash car, as you say, Bodvar, there is a certain proportion of teenage chicks who are going to fall for that. There is absolutely.
was I'm not slandering it, but I had to intervene in a situation back in Scandinavia where in a town was a local pizzeria, and he got exposed that a young girl was like wanting to get free alcohol and had taken a photo of her breasts and given it to the shop owner.
Yep.
And I went in myself to deal with this, and he had to close shop and move out of the village, actually, just from me intimidating, basically. But because it was a small town, it's like the parents responsible, the girls, like, like this, obviously that, doing that shifty behavior. Like some girls can be silly if they know all they need to do is like, here's a photo of my titties and give me a couple of free beers,
Yep.
So it's like, it's like there's this thing that happens, but when it doesn't happen, is the majority. This case is not the majority. This is where they get tricked and like mostly what happens is there's been just straight up kidnappings. And in Sydney with the Lebanese ones and all the ones that were taken to public toilets at like football fields, sorry.
Yeah.
And the men would come, and then the next ones would have a turn. They'd be locked inside like this toilet block, or they'd be drugged, and and they had infidel and everything written on them in paint while they were being abused and called Anglo scum.
The same sort of shit that happened in England with the so-called grooming gangs. Yeah.
Well, sorry to cut off, but I'll tell you to put some context in it. The Sheik of Australia at the time, it's called the uncovered meat fiasco. Do you remember this?
Yeah, but look, if all white women were,
before it happened,
if all white women were good girls, you wouldn't. All I'd say is this, Bodvar: if all white women were good girls, you wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of them on OnlyFans, would you?
No. But the thing about like the time when this was really like when it came to the forefront was the Sheik of Australia. His name was Sheik Halili. He said that women in bikinis on the beach were uncovered meat, and you can't blame the animals if you leave meat uncovered. Basically comparing these people to animals, pretty funny. But the thing is like the bikini company at the time came up with like a brand called Uncovered Meat to like do the tit for tat, so like trying to and I do believe that we should live in a society where you can go to the beach or the lake if it's Europe, and the families, and even like when I've been in Norway, when you go to the lake, there's families as far as the eye can see, and all their kids are swimming nude in the lake, and there's no worry.
Well, look, Australia because it has such great beaches. Australia has always been a beach culture, and if Australian white girls want to go to the beach in bikinis, then let them go to the beach in bikinis.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing against blokes going up to such chicks and trying to chat them up. If the girl tells you to fuck off, you fuck off.
Yeah. Well, the lifeguards that intervened in Cronulla intervened because they were basically calling young girls whores for being in bikinis. The lebs that bashed the lifeguards.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and you're right. I know that's true.
Well,
it also happened on the Central Coast where I lived when I first arrived in Australia, which is just north of Sydney, and the same thing happened there because the Central Coast has got fabulous beaches, and the same thing happened there. You had like just little cheeky babes going to the beach in their bikinis, and some of these immigrants, shall we say, thought that merely because they were on the beach in their bikinis, they should be able to grab them and all this kind of stuff.
And even when it's not outright sexual assault, they just harass them. Like even at Bondi, you can be at Bondi. I remember one time there was a group.
I've been there, mate. I know what you mean.
There's like this group of gorillas showering in the fresh showers, after they were done swimming, and then a girl was coming past like on a push bike with a friend of hers on the back seat, and one of her friends had her legs out to the side, the way they used to ride horses. And then they were going along and they were kind of wobbling because there was two of them on a bike, and all the underlings sort of like went in front of her to make her wobble and basically come to the side, and they both like fell off their bike to the side. Unfortunately, that time I was there with 2 mates, and there was like bloody 10 of them. I was just like, God damn it! Like, God damn it! These, that was so like you just wanted to strike and to get involved. But it's just like, oh, and they got up and got back on their bike and rode off, and you're just like, oh, like the way they just like be a menace to white girls, just like in every bullying.
Needless to say, Bolivar, no one on this channel supports any sort of violence because
no, I meant strike and intervene.
We're on YouTube. We're on YouTube, but I do entirely get what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean strike as in make action to stop them harassing young girls. Of course, take some sort of strike of action. Of course.
Absolutely.
Like to say, and then get back to the lifeguard. That's what happened. So the lifeguard told these Afghanis to stop bombing, diving near children, and being dangerous in the swimming pool, because there wasn't a lifeguard at the beach; it was at a swimming pool, right?
Yeah, it was.
And he said, stop diving, stop being dangerous around the other people, and he ended up with his uniform splattered in blood.
Yeah, I saw that, mate. I saw that. He was beaten up by like, I don't know, 8 or 9 blokes, basically.
Yeah. And they weren't the usual thin wimps. They were well fed. They looked a bit buff.
Yeah, they were Afghans apparently.
Yeah, but usually they're kind of nerdy and skinny, but these ones are a little bit well fed. And yeah, so anyway, certain other lads in Melbourne maybe might go down to that pool one day and do a bit of safety patrol.
Well, you never know, mate. You never know. And I wouldn't be against them if they did. But on the other hand, we don't support violence.
No, just safety patrol, just like make sure everyone's safe. Exactly. I mean, the local community are in an outrage about that. As I said, there was some tweets, posts from Facebook shared in an article where they're like absolutely outraged. They say they all need to go and this sort of thing. And as you know, like turning it back to like English affairs, there's speaking about, we don't support this or that, but there has been a push for the subject of public executions coming back in the mainstream and Twitter.
Well, I've supported that. I think Axel Rudikabana deserves execution. I certainly agree with that.
Well, I was speaking with some people who one of them had been in prison wrongly for a while, because I know a few people who've been out of prison, and they said they got stitched up, in the situation. We're actually talking about those Lebanese rape gangs, because he knew, we can get to it later, he knew about the one that's in Supermax, the main ringleader, and, how people were trying to get to him, basically. But he's saying, like, at this point, even though the push and the conversation about the public executions is okay, but obviously with the way it is now, with what's happened, we can't be entrusting the state with this sort of power at the moment. Is this pickle we're in. Because what they do when they make these sort of laws, and Patriot Act in America was meant to be for kebabs, and then it got turned on.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Saxon Americans, and then we've got other laws coming out. But so really, the narrative push is good, but at the same time, like if that sort of law comes into effect, we kind of need to be the ones like.
All right, I'm going to ask you guys later, not now. I'm going to ask both of you guys later what you think of Trump so far. I think he's doing pretty well so far, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to ask Armin, because I know he wants to talk about this actual Rudy Cabana case, etc. So I want to ask Armin to talk about that now, if he doesn't mind. Adam, and carry on then.
I think he might be BRB. He wrote BRB in the side chat.
Oh, okay. He'll be back soon then. Yeah. But look, this animal, and I hesitate to call him an animal, because animals on the whole are not that cruel, Like they'll eat you, they'll kill you, and they'll eat you, but they're not as cruel as this bastard was. These were little tiny girls. Some of them were stabbed 120 times.
About that, if I may, just quickly. There's cases where this savagery, this kind of savagery is typical to the certain sort of individual we're talking about, and that there's cases where they count the stab wounds from the floor and the point from the floor, and there's been cases in America with the same sort of people back as long as far back as the 70s. And when they do, like like a murder or a home invasion, and the stab wounds is like immense, where they just sort of go into a frenzy when they're doing their their murders.
Yeah, I mean, you look. I don't know if you can even understand this, but like 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old girls are little, 120 stab wounds.
Mm.
I can't trust myself to talk about this because
It's like I was saying, they go into a frenzy because it's like, they like, I know, like I've known people that have had to like, defend people and this sort of stuff, and but when this is sort of like a frenzied, hateful hate. It's the hate involved, and it turns them into like a monster, like a demon. Like people say the photo
yeah, Rudy Kapana
looks like a
hated
demon.
white
Not the
people.
choir boy elementary primary school photo they released the first March.
Rudy Kapana hated white people, and that was why he was quick killing these little girls. And he said afterwards, "I'm glad those little girls are dead." Now, all right, he got 52 years in prison. I think he should have been executed. I honestly do. Should have been executed. But I'll wait till Alman comes back because I know he wants to talk about this a bit.
Yeah, it's difficult, very difficult to talk about, as you say.
Well, it is because you can't tell the truth.
Well,
These people are so disgusting and such monsters that why do we feed them for the next 52 years?
I had before Adam gets back, I tell you, they had a discussion about people who claim that too many people do black pilling and posting the doom of everything that's going on in that. But with the situation with the Pakistanis being discussed abroad, and this situation with this murderers and all the other people that are injured and lost spleens and pancreases or whatever, and have to take antibiotics the rest of their lives. And there's all the other ones that are completely messed up for the rest of their lives as well.
Little girls stabbed in the face. Little girls of like 5, 6, 7 stabbed in the face.
Yeah.
And if you're a woman and you get stabbed in the face, that probably isn't gonna make your life better,
Yeah, some of them are missing organs and stuff now, but yeah.
It's really, really disgusting. But anyway, Adam will be back in due course, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm back.
Adam, we've just been talking about this Axel Rubicana scum. What did you want to talk about?
There's lots to comment on this, I suppose. I was reminded when I was looking at the news where it said about how he'd been referred to Prevent 3 times and they basically hadn't done anything. We talked on this very stream, I believe it was a little over a year ago, when the Shawcross review was done, which was a review into Prevent. And we covered how like there was a bit where like one of their things was that they said that like people that watch Michael Portillo's Great Railway Journeys was like a sign of far right ideation. Same for Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And what some of the recommendations that came out of there, obviously that guy was a bit of a wet and it didn't really go anywhere near far enough, but even some of the basic recommendations about like a bit more transparency on why they do or don't pursue certain cases. Like none of that's been followed. And I actually only just found out this week, I didn't realize this at the time, that it prevents like Toothless, right? They're just like a Toothless, Tony Blairist bureaucratic organization run by people that
Well,
have
they're pretty big, Alman, to be fair, if you are supposedly right wing.
Well, all they can do is talk to you. But here's the thing, though, as like even though the people that make up that institution are not really professionals in any particular field, they're just random civil servants, and they talk to you and they can like put you onto other things, but they can't like impose anything on you. But you are legally required as a public institution to report people to them. Otherwise, you can be liable if anything happens. Of course, that doesn't work. That doesn't work beyond that point. Prevent is not liable if they decided to not pursue, let's say, this guy, and something ends up happening as it did. So I don't know. It's kind of it's like we had Morgoth on a few weeks ago, and we talked about the grooming gang case, and he likened it to like British and Old in terms of how it's like a mass failing piled on top of a tower of other institutional failings. And this kind of is too. It's like there's so many of these happening now, but this is basically the same too. You know, and all they've done in the aftermath is, even though there's some if you were actually, let's say, as some people have said, putting the woke away, or you actually wanted to right the ship in any way, there's a lot of really easy home runs you can do where you carve out some of the tumors without actually undermining the state as a whole. But they seem completely unwilling to go after any of them.
It was Amazon's fault, mate, because you could buy a knife on Amazon at 17.
I've got a Swiss Army knife on my desk right now, right in front of me, that I take when I go hiking. And I bought this from Amazon last May. It's my newest one.
Yeah, and I used to have one when I was in the army, mate.
Yeah,
because we would open bottles and all this stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
But I bought this from Amazon, and I had to show age verification on delivery for this. And I went and checked because I was like, I'm not imagining this, am I? And I went on and checked, and I put another one in and went to order one, and it does come up. It says you have to show age verification to the driver when they deliver it.
Do you think, Adam, that it might be that Britain doesn't have a knife problem, it has a mass fur-balled immigration problem?
Well,
hang on a second. Hang on. Do you reckon the delivery driver didn't ask him?
I think it was delivered to his mother or something. So his parents kind of received weapons on his behalf after knowing that he had this, like, there were these issues.
Baby, all right, guys. Look, I've got to tell you this, right? Yesterday on Saturday in Australia, I tried to order from Woolworths twice, but because I had alcohol in my order, the first driver wouldn't leave it here. The second driver wouldn't leave it here. And I'm almost 60, right? I don't look like I'm under 18, right? This is insanity. We live in an insane world, you know?
What you mean leave it? Like leave the deliveries at your door?
He wouldn't leave the delivery. He just took it away. He said, understand, Bodvar, like I didn't get angry with them because they're both Indians, you understand. And if you get angry with Indians, they just call you racist. But
what was the issue about not giving it? Because
I had alcohol in my order, but I didn't have something with a photograph of my date of birth.
Oh, you didn't have ID. You had to show ID.
Yeah. My ID was not strong enough.
It's like you're clearly an old man. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I'm, like I said, mate, I'm almost 60. But
hell.
The first time I said, all right, redeliver it, because I spent half an hour on the phone to Woolworths, And the second time, I just said to the girl, look, I just want a refund, all right? And they did say that they would have left my food but taken the alcohol away. And I just said, nah, fuck that. You take it all back, all right? And I want a refund. And then I just went out and bought my own alcohol. Because the thing is, this is the ridiculous situation in Australia, and particularly in Victoria. Like, I can walk into a bottle store and buy any alcohol I want, and no one asks me for ID because I don't look like I'm under 18, you know? I'm 60. But if you order it from Woolworths or somebody like that, the Indian, almost invariably Indian driver can tell you, oh, you're a very, very, very bad man. You're a racist man. Blah, 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 blah. This is where we live now, boys. It is. It's crazy.
So it's saying it's equally crazy.
It's just fucking insane, you know?
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to leaving my 1980s timeline down here to come back to the hell world of the city, but it'll be a change for a while. The thing about what you're talking about, their service as well, like I don't know who was talking about it in the show about how, you know, when you go into like a petrol station after you filled in the car, you know, the clerks pretty much, if they're doing something, they'll go to the counter and serve you, and okay, there's the money, and you go. There's this increasingly this thing where you can go into a place like that, and the workers who are, can be those sort of people, just like don't stop what they're doing and come and help you. Just like keep on doing what they're doing for like minutes at a time, and you're like, it's like, excuse me, get to the fucking counter. Like,
totally agree, man. Totally agree. Look, I will note something. I don't know where Mitch is. Mitch should be on this stream. And there are a few Aussies I invited on as well. Hopefully they will join in due course. But yeah. But yeah, we live in an absolute clown world today in the West. An absolute clown world. And you have all the British newspapers, right? The mainstream media, who are the biggest shitbags you will ever find, trying to say, oh, Britain doesn't have a third world immigrant problem. No, it has an Amazon problem, or you can order a knife online. Guys, I got to tell you, right? If you ban knives, no one will be able to cut their meat. No one will be able to cut their meat. But you can still stab and kill people with screwdrivers. So are they then
even in the metal-free environment in prisons, they make shivs and kill each other. But even then, like, my big problem with this is like, okay, so you've lobotomized and or disarmed everyone to the extent that no one can stab each other, even if that were true. But of course, why should we have to put up with this sort of low trust atmosphere full of ethnic resentment and sort of petty tribal conflict? Like, even if it's all cold conflict, like that's not the founding. That's not the building blocks of a society.
No,
and it isn't the way we should have to live.
Destruction of a society.
Yeah.
Look, somebody, I can't remember who it was now, pointed out that in the 1960s, and I was born in 1965, all British schoolboys carried penknives. They did.
Yeah.
Everyone had a penknife.
This just disappeared as I was growing up, but you used to be able to go, you'd go out on the school trip to like this museum or this place or that place, and you go into the gift shop and they'd have their little penknife with the the logo of whatever the place was on the side of it.
Yeah, even as I recall, Alman, Canterbury Cathedral had a penknife.
Yeah, and the Roman History Museum in Canterbury had one as well.
Yeah, exactly. And strange to say, very few people were stabbed in Britain because we didn't have mass third-world immigration.
Yeah,
No, so even the stabbings that do and did happen, like Glasgow was obviously like known for its knife crime and stuff like this. It wasn't white men stabbing children; it was white men stabbing each other, which maybe they had a
Yeah,
disagreement.
100%, mate. Yeah, 100%. Oh, look, if you were some sort of gangster type in either Glasgow or London, yeah, you might end up getting stabbed. But you know what? They didn't stab women and children. They just didn't. It
and
wasn't their deal.
even there was a bit of an ethnic component to it because, of course, they had large Irish diasporas that had sort of an issue against the Scots and so on and so forth,
Yep,
and the same in
yep,
Liverpool as well.
yep. But
Um,
Well,
even with those guys back in the day, they didn't stab women
No.
and children. That
No.
wasn't their deal.
No,
you know?
it just translated into gangland conflict.
Yeah.
But it didn't have like, so there was an ethnic component to it, but it wasn't like a racial animus or an ethnic hatred like what we seem to deal with now.
No, and the guys they all wanted to stab were other men,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
It's like Limerick in Ireland is known as Stab City. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about like people say, Steve Laws, etc. The social contract's just broken. It's just broken, and it's completely broken. It's not a little bit broken. It's 100% broken.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's like black activists on Twitter now posting edits, essentially praising Ruda Cabana. Admittedly, they're small. Like, when you see like pro-black stuff go up, some of that shit will get like 100,000 likes, even though it's got sort of like very, very anti-white undertones to it. This has only got like, I think 100 likes, but the fact that it exists at all is testament to the fact that these people shouldn't be here.
Well, it's the same as the Australia Day. Sorry to cut you, but just quickly, the Australia Day stuff where they say Invasion Day and burn the colony and that. Well, some of the people hold signs that just say "Death to Australia" with like flames written around it and shit. So, it's like if they mean death to Australia, then all these weaponized brown people we have here
do mean that.
Yeah, and then they would have no problem with basically. It's kind of like like in war situations when Dutch and other colonists like pulled out of Singapore when the Japanese came down, and you see how the local population actually will treat the hosts, or given what they want. Like the Senator Lydia Thorpe just said the other day on a podcast that white people are becoming aware that they're getting less in number and the brown people are growing in number and the white people are afraid of them. So it's like an Ash Sarkar, we're winning sort of thing, but totally mask off, detailing that she's gleeful that white people are getting scared and itchy.
Well, I don't know about white people. I'm not getting scared because on the average, black people are cowards, but that's just me.
No, but they obviously, the true cowards are them because they're talking about how they're waiting until they're the majority, and then they're going to let us have it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, go and look at my friend Conscious Caracal, who is a great South African YouTuber, and he's on Twitter. He's a good Afrikaans guy. And I wouldn't always agree with him about South African history, but he's absolutely correct about modern South Africa. Good guy. Recently got married to a very pretty girl. Yeah. Conscious Caracal. Go and follow him if you follow any South African. Go do it. He's a good guy.
So I want to know, Adam, and what do you? I'll check it out. What do you reckon, Adam, about the discussion about the executions being brought back for this? What was he? Was he Nigerian? Is why they tried to say he wasn't Muslim at first. What is he?
He was Rwandan.
Rwandan, where they did the massive genocide. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Rwandan, and did how I mentioned that people saying, yeah, okay, execution discussions coming back, but the state can't be given that power now. But do you see the problem here as well?
Yeah, it's I mean it's the strongest I've seen the conversation on it in, like, I think all the time that I've been alive. Like we had what was it, Lee Anderson, the MP, the Reform MP,
Hang the
just posting
bastard.
just posting nooses on his on his Twitter
Just
feed.
hang the bastard. Yeah.
And you can actually see as well, you can see the same defeatist language that the leftists have kind of gotten themselves into using a bit too often. They're using it for this too, where instead of like saying, oh, this is obviously ridiculous, or mocking the people that do it, they instead are just jump into saying, he can't say this is against parliamentary standards. And they're trying to sort of shut it down that way, which is how they've kind of been losing the grip on a lot of the narratives anyway over time. So I'm happy to see them continue that trend.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But it is interesting. The main thing is always to try and get some momentum behind it, and I don't think we will here. But obviously, I suppose the next time something big happens, which probably won't, which sadly we won't have to wait very long. The conversation will come back even louder again.
Some of those little girls were 6, Armin, and
Yeah.
they were stabbed 122 times in the back. Their heads were almost severed.
Well, the thing is, in America this week, so the same week as the sentencing of this guy here, there was a school shooting in America. And it resulted in, significantly less deaths than this did. So, like, that guy wanted to perpetuate a school massacre. He basically got something in the same league. And it's like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't see how it really, like the gun conversation or the knife conversation really matters next to like the black conversation.
It's insane because it's not the gun or the knife, it's the supposed human being that is the problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like
if you didn't import Axel Rudy Cabana's parents, this would not have happened in Britain.
Yeah, and the thing is that, like, when the leftists say, oh, the gun makes it easier, and it's like, yeah, sure, but like, what good is making it easier if you just remove the issue from society entirely? Which is to remove these essentially bad actors. Yeah, it's like someone's posting like the number of times in chat. I mean, when I was reading the notes, and it was going through, and it was like a reporter going through what people could see. Yeah, there's a bit where it said that you could see on the CCTV one girl trying to leave and then being pulled back in, and I lost it at that point. That was fucking horrific.
Yeah, and these are toddlers, by the way.
Yeah,
these are toddlers. They are very small girls.
Yeah.
And he said when the cops arrived, "Yeah, I'm so glad they're dead. So glad they're dead."
Well,
and
this is the other thing as well.
Through his trial, he tried to claim he wasn't feeling well.
Well, this is the other thing as well.
My way, he wouldn't have been feeling well. He'd have been dead.
He kept disrupting the court case, and he kept like mouthing off and saying particularly egregious things during the court case. And I mean, I was talking to, like, there was someone I was talking to, I think yesterday, and they were a bit of a boomer, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I bet it wiped the look off his face when he got it." It's like, right, but why are we allowing these people to sit in the courtroom and sort of defame the courtroom in this way? Why was he not just gagged, smashed over the back of the head with a truncheon, and forced to listen to his sentence in silence?
100%. I totally agree, man.
It's because the enemy is in power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely right, Bodvar and Alman. Yeah, the enemy is in power, and the enemy hates us as European white people far more than
But
they
there's a,
hate Axel Rudy Bacon.
but it's not just that. Like, if this situation is like the most extreme, sort of like distant from us in terms of the type of person we're dealing with. But Emily Jones was done by a female Albanian, and like Albanians definitely need to be out of Britain as well.
Yeah.
And also, like, and there's been so many children, like there was a 12-year-old boy the other day, Leo. I don't think they released his name, and I think he was mixed. I think he was like mainly white, but maybe a bit quote unquote Asian or something, 30% or something. Leo, 12-year-old boy, is a photo of him, and he's been slaughtered. I can't remember where that was. Maybe you heard about that, Adam. But so yes, there's another 12-year-old boy, and as we know, like at this point, Chris Donald's killers have been at football, so. And it's just like, because the thing about the Sydney gang rapes, not to go back to that, but one of those might be up for parole in 2028. They're not one, the main one. And it's just like, so we're at the point now where people are getting out, and soon to be getting out, that have committed the very first of these. Because Chris Donald was only a few years older than these. I mean, maybe he's 15, but he's still a kid, and he was kidnapped. And that was actually, Scotland did actually mark that as the first case of racially hate motivated murder. So they were sentenced for.
But Bodvar, you have to see that as far as the leftists are concerned, which includes all the globalists, like the people who run the Australian government, and also the Starmer, two-tier Starmer government, there's no such thing as anti-white racism. Doesn't exist as far as all these wankers are concerned. But of course, it's a total lie.
Yeah, because that guy in Germany that ran over all those Christians, he was like far right, don't you know?
No, yeah.
Yeah, sure he was. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as the English listening won't know, and some Aussies apparently don't know either, but Melbourne's had basically, we'll go back to, I don't mean to take away from the root of the barn, we'll go back to it in a second, but Melbourne's had lots of anti-Semitic attacks, like on a daily basis recently. But basically, like every day, there's been some sort of graffiti on cars or some buildings or whatever. And the government has their extremism crisis. And if any feds are listening, like, hello, try to figure it out.
Oh yeah, ASIO, we're here. We're here, ASIO. Hello.
They say there's an extremism crisis, but do you know, like for example, what happened with this? I don't even want to say his name. Like the Demon N. Was how do you say what he done and what happened to those girls. I'm gonna have to say this kind of cryptically, and you're either gonna get it, and if you don't get it, some people listening might get it. Let's just say, like, when you see like dead girls on the street, sometimes in pieces from maybe like a traffic piece or something like that, and if you've seen it or whatever, it's like some people, let's just say some people had their reasons for doing some things and then motivated by these things, like, for vengeance and that sort of thing. So in a society that's total Gotham City, I think you called it the other day, Adam, and was it like London, or it's just like total Gotham? And the people that are left, the good guys, see children slaughtered in the street, like things happen sometimes, and the government is more concerned about reactions to the slaughters, and that's all it is.
Vastly more concerned.
Yeah, but they're also worried. They're not worried about boomers that put in jail Facebook posts. They're worried about other sort of reactions. You follow me? There was a certain reaction in England the other day, actually, but we won't get onto that.
Yep. Adam?
Yeah, it's
hard to talk about.
Yeah, it's also like I'm never really sure when we talk about these sort of subjects. It's like you always want to break it down, don't you? And it's like you diagnose it, you talk about this in more detail, and then finally you talk about a solution. It's like, but I don't.
Can't say it.
I just don't know where we go from here.
Well, so even African women.
The solution is like English people in England and Australian people in Australia. That's really the solution.
Yeah, How do we get there though?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that is the solution. Like, if you're a little kid in Australia or a little kid in England and a load of white people find you, you you don't get 122 stab wounds. You get sent home to your parents. That's the truth.
Hmm.
That's what white people will do.
Mm. I think what differentiates this is like, the motivation of it being like radicalized against white people and to kill children, and obviously like for these sort of rats, children is an easy target and women. Okay, well, and we've had other situations where other sort of incidents where women and children are targeted, and the person doing it could be kebab or it could be dark continent, it could be whatever, right? But the point is that sort of motivation is like, okay, yeah, there's that. But just general crime, like all the home invasions in Melbourne from the Sudanese gangs, general crime. They've not been without violence. They're busting into your room in the middle of the night with machetes. So it's like Melbourne has constant home invasions from Sudanese gangs, which are the same sort of thing as this fellow. It's just like having people that are that low impulse control around you. So obviously we see what America has to go through in South Africa. So now there's like Sudanese gangs in Melbourne causing trouble, and in England you just got it all. It just could be whenever something like this happens, it's just like take your pick of what it could be. It's in Britain.
Well, Bodvar, I live on the outskirts of Melbourne, all right? And if someone breaks into my house, I got a very hard, very
So later,
worked up,
yeah,
heavy, like 4 foot long stick that is going to really break many of their teeth, many of their eyes, and many of their noses. So if they want to try it with me, let them try it.
and that's the thing. You see different groups doing different things. You've got the Sudanese doing home invasions in Melbourne. You've got the sort of what they call Asians in England doing more, focusing on like, not that they don't do a whole lot of other crimes, but they've got this thing where they focus on sexual predation of our women, of our girls. And like we were saying earlier, the thing in Sydney was that the Lebanese did the same thing. Lebanese Muslims targeted white girls. So it's like what we're always talking about here is either like straight up terrorism and murders, or like decades of sexual predation. So it's like it sort of goes back between when something like this happens, everyone kicked off, and there's a bunch of people in prison over it because, of course.
Well, I will say all reality is correct because when I lived in South Africa, I had a 5.56 rifle and a 9mm pistol, and breaking into my house would have been a very, very bad idea. But
That said, though, it doesn't
not.
it doesn't even really take weaponry. It just takes community action because if you go back to like the 1919 race riots right here in England.
Oh yeah, yeah.
A lot of them kicked off. I mean, they never really talk about it, but a lot of them kicked off because a black guy stabbed an Englishman that was talking to his fiancée in a doorway.
That's right. Yes,
yeah.
he did. Yeah,
And
I know that story.
Yeah, these blacks were held up in this house, and when the crowd came to like kick them out of town, they were firing on people from the windows with weapons.
Yeah. And they mostly got killed. Good.
Yeah, and the people storming the house didn't have anything. They weren't armed at all, and they just still turfed them out.
They did.
So yeah, that's ultimately when shit hits the fan, and it's going to be the same. Like you get like the Boers. Obviously, they've had some bad news recently.
Yep.
But like the Boers, ultimately, a lot of them are armed, but what they need more than anything, and what they have more than anything, and what's going to keep them going is the fact that they're they have sort of like a cohesive community that understands the reality of what they're facing.
They have a group who stands by each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you what, like I'm an Englishman, all right, But I'll tell you something about Scotsmen, for example. Scotsmen will always stand together. They will. If someone else is a Scotsman, with a very few exceptions, all Scotsmen will say, yeah, he's a Scotsman, I'm going to stand with him. England needs to get that back. England needs to get that back. Where he's an Englishman, I'm just going to stand with him. I might not agree with him totally, but he's English, so I will. We have to do this, as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to go back to something that Orb said a little bit before that, and then also Geralt of Rivia said they love their soft targets. Like one of the things that when you go through and look at some of their reactions and some of them talking about like the Ruda Cabana and other such cases before that, they're very, very conscious of the fact that hitting, like specifically hurting women and children it's like a double blow, because they're both inflicting suffering on the community, and they're specifically sort of mocking men for being unable to protect those
100%. You're not protecting your women, folk.
Yeah.
100%. Vex Peril is totally wrong in the chat. Melbourne ain't nice, mate. If you think it is, don't know. You ain't been here for a long time then. But yeah, I totally agree with Atman on this. If you can kill and hurt women and children, that makes the local white dudes, they all think, we're useless. You know, that's the why they do it.
Is that the point where the
carry on, Bob?
Well, I just think people, like women, like there's one woman on the scene that goes, like, organizes sort of like events, like I won't say who it is, in England, that is, and she was talking about how often they go for the neck initially because it says something, and when they are like the snack bar variety, of a certain religion, it says to go to the neck. In some passage, something about you strike at the neck. So she was talking about how her and her friend, when they go to these things where they put themselves in jeopardy because they don't really have men around them, because there's a lot of brave Anglo women that are really on the ball with, like, organized. I can't talk too much about it, but do it, getting people together and that. And they say they're making these like sort of like little chainmail sort of like scarves, a little like heavy cotton canvas, like little sort of like protective gear, like just something, especially in winter or whatever, just you wrap around your neck. It's like, because basically going out now, when we're at this low-level race war, is in places in England, it's just like women in public need to start having like low-level undergarments of protective nature. You can't be out there like a block of butter. Like,
we all know excellent, extremely brave women like Lady Charlotte, for example. Excellent woman, extremely brave. She's ill now at the moment, I'm sad to say. But like Lady Charlotte is a great, excellent woman. So yeah.
Well, yeah, but they were talking about for the women especially to have this sort of some level of protection when you're out and about now, because just going out and hoping it doesn't happen to you, it's not good enough anymore. Like, but anyway, I don't want to preach about what should be done, but like walking around just like completely, I mean, the small stuff you can do to stop it being as easy. But yeah, anyway, the point is, we shouldn't have to live like this. And about this thing, I think a lot of people see that photo of him. Like, I spoke to a friend of mine from England the other day that is just like from my trade, from work, and he's just a normie, as we call them, right? But he was like, the way he was talking about it, like they're sort of slightly, very, very, very upset by like the image that they've seen of him. I talked to him. So I was speaking to him about this, and he's like, yeah, he's seen the photo. It's just like, yeah, it's just like, what the fuck? Like, just like they can't get over it. And I could hear that what he was thinking was, this is a fucking demon, and because of the state of it, the way it looks and what it is. It's like, anthropologically speaking, you see something like that historically as different hominins, and the immediate expectation is some sort of conflict.
Yeah, you see so many of them like that though. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone and they were saying like, oh, he looks like an absolute psycho, and I thought I kind of thinking they're like there was a bus stop I drove past on the way there where there was a couple of them sitting there and they looked exactly the same.
Well, I'll tell you something personal. I'll tell you a little tale quickly if I can. It's like, see, growing up in Darwin and then coming down to Sydney in like early teens. When I was in the middle of the city around, I don't know, I think it was about 13 or something. First time I seen like a Darkest Night, from the Dark Continent one that wasn't an Aboriginal, but like this one. I remember it made eye contact with me and my mates at the time. I think we were going to like see a movie, like fucking whatever. And they're like, yeah, you don't look at those guys because they're some sort of riffraff that like stand over robbery people outside the cinemas. And like, yeah, don't make eye contact with them. And I was just like, I remember looking. It's the first time I seen one that wasn't Aboriginal, like, and I said to them, like, what's with that? And they're like, yeah, no, they'll ask you for money or whatever. But the way he gave me that 9-mile stare, like, looking, it was like that anthropological moment I described where you like, sort of like one group of hominin meets another and you see it and you're automatically like, I was automatically like, knew there's a threat here. Something. Why is this guy staring at me like this? What is? It's 13 years old, right? And turns out, I can tell you countless stand over robbery tales. But yeah, no, you see, and it's just something instinctual, isn't it? And people have bred that out of them. But like, I'll tell you something refreshing. Is I met an old man here the other day when I was using the public showers at a boatyard. Actually, he came out to wash them out. His son was the owner. He used to be the owner. His son ran it. He just cleaned them out. And I was talking to him, and after 10 minutes, he said to me, because he visited London in the 70s, after 10 minutes talking to him, mask off, he says to me, Enoch Powell tried to warn us about this.
Yeah, you hear that a lot nowadays.
Yeah, well, it's just like, it obviously multicultural things, with the Roman Empire and that have like, been around before. But when you get like the one like done these slaughters of his children, everyone knows that the further away they are, so that you've got Middle Easterners, you guys call Asians, but the further away they are from us, zero Neanderthal percentage sub-Saharans. It's just a fucking hominid war amongst different fucking subspecies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Half the time they don't even realize they're doing it either. It's just they operate so much on autopilot. You see these videos online as well where like they'll get interviewed.
Yeah, it's like how they say they don't have the inner monologue thing. They don't have it. Yeah, they don't give. They don't care. Like they just like you said, he was gleeful about it. Well, it's like that Daryl Brooks one in America that ran over the people in the Christmas parade. Like, it's not just because he was young and teenage got radicalized by the internet. So that Daryl Brooks was just a straight up American end. That's like, yeah, I'm going to run over all these people.
Yeah.
I used to know a girl many moons ago in Brisbane who was a Lebanese Christian girl, and she said to me, Ted, I'll never go out with a Lebanese Muslim, never, because she knew what they were like.
My mother has a Jamaican friend she worked with, for God's sake, and she said she would never date Africans because they're all abusive to women. Yeah. There's an African woman saying that. So I mean, their women know how they are.
Oh yeah, this was a Lebanese Christian girl. She was damn cute. She used to be an air hostess in Lebanese Airways, and she just said, "Look, I'll never go out with a Lebanese Muslim because they're assholes, basically."
Well, there is a conversation that Sydney especially got like a lot of like the worst of Lebanon, so to speak. We were talking about it on the show the other day. like I don't know, it's hard to say really, but the one you were talking about, these Maronites, it's the same in Syria. These
Yep.
Christian ones, they tend to be like the ones that actually could be like surgeons. There's like there's I know there's like that there are Christian Syrian like surgeons and Lebanese Maronite surgeons
Yeah,
and stuff.
some of them are damn good people. Yeah,
Well, I don't
absolutely.
know anything about good, but like intelligent enough to be surgeons and stuff like that. But like the ones that did all the rape in Sydney were these sort of like mountainous dwelling, bulky, more brutish,
Yep, yep,
lower caste
yep.
Lebanese, and they had their own conflicts they brought to Sydney, similar to like when perhaps even like Italians or Albanians would bring their blood feuds with them. So they brought their own internal blood feuds. That was also a thing. But yeah.
Yeah, yep. No,
It's
you're right, man.
well, the whole thing about multiculturalism is that, I mean, I would say World War II is the final result of multiculturalism, and they only
Sure.
took one.
Yep,
It only took
yep,
one ethnicity to cause that problem back those days. We won't
yep.
get into that, but that was like in a way like a final result of multiculturalism, and that only took one ethnicity to do it. But now the thing is obviously the argument like places like Scandinavia that were generous, with people from the Balkans and Serbia, Bosnia, and this sort of stuff. Well, yeah, there's heavy Bosnian, Serbian organized. Their problems, even the Muslim and the Christian Orthodox Serbian issue, they've kind of the organized crime have kind of like, I don't know, they've settled it, so to speak. There's no like Bosniaks running around with
Don't think
AK-47
they have
shooting.
sold it, but yeah, why not?
Well, not settled, but when they're abroad, they're just like focusing on their organized crime. Because a place like Sweden, most of the organized crime is still Christian. It's Christian Assyrian, it's Christian Orthodox Serbian. It's like there's not like Muslims in the higher ranks of organized crime either. So they're kind of like shit. I mean, not that being organized crime is good, but you know what I mean. They're kind of like they're not.
Not true in Britain, I would say. I would say there is a lot of organized Muslim crime in Britain.
Well, Britain's unique
Although
because.
I will listen to Atman and what he says also.
Well, I'll just say quickly, Britain has been the southern Italian mafia that has the main racket on cocaine was usurped by the Albanian mafia in Britain. So Albania mafia has more or less exclusive cocaine distribution in UK now, whereas before in the rest of Europe that would be an affair of the Calabrian mafia. So yeah, Britain having that many Albanians.
Never helps. It never helps. Alman, any final thoughts, mate?
Final. No.
I just don't know what to say about people who stab little tiny toddler girls 120 odd times.
Yeah.
And nearly
mean,
sever their head.
mm,
I don't know what to say about that, except he should be executed, obviously. Yeah.
yeah, it's a heavy topic. I don't. I mean, you can uh, punch the air like 50 times and feel the amount of like effort that takes, even just that.
Yeah.
And there's like across all those people, there was like combined hundreds of
Yeah.
stab wounds. It's absolutely horrific.
I mean, the other thing that struck me, and I don't know if this is fair, but I just think if there'd been one bloke there who had realized I need something about 3 or 4 foot long, it's really heavy, he could possibly have stopped that. A bloke, a man who like would work out I need something 3 or 4 foot long that's really heavy. That when I hit him on his arm, it's going to break his fucking arm. That is what you needed. A bit of toxic masculinity, maybe.
I mean, I do think that a lot of guys, as you say, a proper guy, when
Yeah,
faced with that situation,
a real guy, like a ex-British soldier who just left or something like
yeah,
that.
like you're
Yeah,
gonna grab a chair or something, but even failing that, you're just gonna try and get control of his knife arm, even if you
yeah,
have to take a blow or two yourself.
yeah.
It
You're going to
does
get
happen.
stabbed once or twice, but so what?
Mm,
You know,
It,
that's
it
what
does
you
happen.
do.
That Sydney attacker, the Sydney terrorist one that was running around with a knife in Sydney after he killed an escort, was
yeah.
pinned down by a bunch of tradies with milk crates and chairs and stuff like that, and chairs from a cafe, and they pinned him down till the cops came. So like,
Mm.
it does happen, but yeah, the
It
man has to
can
be
happen.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was like a kids show for sing songs with
Yeah, but they
just
needed. All I'm trying to say here, Bodvar, is
mm,
that one bloke who just left the
mm,
army, say,
yeah,
who could work out what you needed to do, and you
yeah,
just needed like a heavy bit of wood that when
mm,
you first hit his arm, you would
mm,
fucking break it,
yeah,
and then he would have been fucked because then you could have hit his head and
mm.
fucking knocked the cunt out. You know what I mean?
Well, it just goes back to what we already know: is that women are incapable of defending themselves. Not just girls, but women, fully grown women as well. So it's like basically, women can't be allowed to be in spaces on their own without protection in the world we live in.
Lot of truth. Lot of truth. Yeah, lot of truth. Lot of truth. I just wish there'd been one man there, you know, one who had some idea of what you needed to do to destroy this fucking animal.
Mm.
Well,
Well,
I
you
mean,
can
that's
be like,
probably yeah. Sorry, go on, Bob.
no, I was just going to say quickly. You're talking about prevent. You can be fuck you. I'm Millwall and go to get a training course on how not to get radicalized afterwards.
Yeah,
Do,
I saw that
do
again
you
the
know
other day.
what? All right, Bodvar, that's funny because my younger brother used to be an enormous Millwall fan. Used to travel all over the country. Used to get in a fair few like fights and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? If he'd have been in that place, he would have stopped that guy. He would have stopped him. And he would have
Yeah, to be
stopped
honest,
him fairly quick.
I think sort of at least 6 out of 10 Millwall fans would have done
It
that.
raises the question.
Yeah.
So one
Yeah.
more thing, and I'll let you
Yeah.
go. It raises the question that the person also had to have been white, and obviously not like some sort of Star Wars like soy boy, whatever you call it. Like, it had to be a white man of courage. But
Oh yeah.
if there was like any nons in there, being men wouldn't matter. They probably wouldn't have done anything.
No. I'm talking about English, British
Yeah, yeah,
people
yeah,
or Anglo Australians, that
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah, exactly.
It just needed to be a white dude who like had some idea of how to fight.
Yeah. No, it's always difficult. Like, there's been situations in Sweden late at night, I'll just say quickly, where I've been wanting to get involved, and I've learned the error of my ways because it's you can get in a lot of trouble getting involved in some situations late at night with drunken girls, and you think they're getting harassed, and it turns out they know the people, and it's just like you really need to be careful. But when it comes to kids, there's no question. So it's like,
it's women is different, but kids, you can protect kids. You can.
it was just like there's been situations where I could have ended up killed defending some drunken like idiot that was getting like not like abused, but like like yelling and some sort of issue with some sort of kebabs. It's like a white Nordic girl screaming and carrying on. And there's some of these Arabs, and I'm just watching like at the bus stop, 1 o'clock in the morning, because I used to get the bus back to the countryside. I'd be like, do I get involved in this while it's just verbal? Like
Mostly no. Mostly no.
But it's sad to see. Like, it's annoying to see. It's still triggering to see like this. Just this casual sort of like low level hostility.
My idea, mate, is if it's adult women, you don't get involved. Kids, different story. All right, guys. I haven't had as many Australians as I would like on this stream.
Yeah, you just got a half-assed one.
Well, no, you're an excellent Australian.
Cheers, mate.
Bodvar Biaki, you're my mate. So
I want to tell you something quickly before we wound up about this butcher
go
business
on
because
then.
it's important. See, what I've learned is that Coles and Woolworths, which is like our Tesco's out of it,
Yeah.
made butchers like redundant 4 years ago during the medical tyranny. And across the mainland, all butchers got redundant, and all Coles and all Woolworths. Not down here, but and what they did is they've just basically created these like factories elsewhere where all the meat gets chopped up and the sausages get made or whatever. And you can guess what kind of workers are working at those factories. So, like across the board, men who've been training to be butchers their whole life, apprentices and that, just all of a sudden they're all unemployed from their jobs at Woolies and Coles, which is obviously the main place of employment.
Well, all I can say,
Smart.
Bob, is I'm a member of the colonists Discord, which is full of Australians, and I just hope one of those Aussies will get hold of you and say, "Look, mate, we need a butcher."
No, I'm not actually a butcher. I'm
Really,
a chef, but I'm working with butchers at the moment, and I learned all this shit.
well, either,
Yeah,
mate,
yeah.
either,
No, if I want to
either.
be a chef again, that'll just be painful. But I just think it's like amazing because Tom and his crew did a protest about a pig processing plant in the Albury-Wodonga border with New South Wales and Victoria, where traditionally young men had been working. Speaking of his back to Australia to finish it off, young Australian men had been expecting to like work at this plant. You know, not all of them, but it's been traditional for them to get a job at this plant. And then they brought in other workers to work at it from Vanuatu and some Filipinos and that. And then within a fortnight, a woman was raped by one of the Vanuatuans because of
Funny
pigs.
that.
Yeah, and so as I said, the lads in black went to protest it and heightened this sort of contradictions of the government is basically like taking away. It's like they took our jobs. It was like literally happening in small towns. And the point they made, and on the current affair, was that the media just interviewed the boomers on Easy Street, not the young people that were actually the ones that
No,
contacted
they never do.
yeah, the people that are fake.
No.
So across the board, people are being made redundant from historically reliable tradesman jobs, and it's kind of like and another thing is being back here. COVID has really fucked people. I'll just say I won't go too much into it. Maybe can't talk about too much on YouTube, but people are really, really,
Well,
really fucking shit.
Australians fell for COVID more than anyone else.
Like I got asked to take a test home when I was a bit sniffly. I just threw it in the bin and brought it back and said, "Yeah, it was negative."
Mate, I've had 2 tests, but I was only given them when I had a triple heart bypass last year. And they wouldn't give me the operation unless I took them.
But I want to make one more
And
point.
then I
before we
was
go.
going to die. So, but
Well,
I've never
you're
had
right.
a test, never taken the
We're lucky
vaccine.
you're still with us. You're very resilient. But before I go, I want to say one last thing. It's not a black pill, but it is something to keep in mind because I've really been irritated with. Is that it's been like 50% okay with this crew of butchers I'm working with. Some of them not really. Make jokes about my long hair. So that they don't understand. Racist Finnish black metal. But anyway, the thing is like the thing is what do you call it? They're a little bit casually. How do you say a little bit casually the R word themselves? A little bit casually.
Yeah, I know,
Whatever,
mate.
but
I know
they don't
what
like
you're saying.
this group of that.
Yeah,
But
I
the,
know
the
what
point
you're
is
saying.
that even though they're like that, but check it out. Even though they're like that, right? They've all had their 5 shots. So what's more important?
Right,
Like
right.
these working class, oh yeah, I'm Aussie and I don't like them and I don't like them, but I've had my 5 shots.
Yeah, bullshit, mate. Yeah,
So
you're
it's a bit
100% right.
it's a bit sort of like, how important is being like that compared to being something else now? That's all I wanted to food for
Well,
thought.
how close do you reckon you would be to an Anzac in 1915 if you say you've had your 5 shots, or if you tell just everyone to go and get fucked? Because I reckon the Anzacs in 1915 were much more likely to just say to everyone, "Go get fucked, mate." I'll go and fight, but I'm not taking any notice of your other bollocks. That to me is like a real Australian. An Australian is someone who is not afraid to be outspoken, and is a tough man. I mean, that's what being an Australian bloke traditionally means.
Well, yeah. Well, I put them to the test, and I called them part-timer arists. The R word. I said, you guys are just fucking part-timers. You're not serious. One's talking about this, and the other one's talking about, oh, he had this girlfriend from, this. Well, and they just do low-hanging fruit. And so when there's been all these sort of incidents with the big nose tribe lately, and it's all over the radio, one of them even said, "Oh yeah, well fuck those lot," but I don't believe in doing that to them because the kebabs did something at a child daycare center the other day or something, and obviously, like quote unquote, evil Nazis don't do things like that, but they were the lads are reacting on the radio, the ones I'm working with, saying, "Oh yeah, I mean, I don't fucking like those small hats." They said they're actual, but I don't believe in doing that to daycare center and treating them like that, And I just casually said, well, maybe if they didn't import their own enemies to our countries, they wouldn't have this problem.
Yep, you're 100%, Bob.
And they just looked at me like, what does that mean? And it just sort of left them scratching their heads.
Oh, look, Bob Farr, you're my mate. You know this.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, no, you're my mate. I mean, I'm a Pommy bastard and you're an Aussie bastard, and that's fair enough. But yeah, you know I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I call you in said, the slang, you're a hard cunt. You're a very hard cunt. You're not.
I've had my moments, shall we say.
Man, Boers and Anglos in South Africa, you're a hard cunt, mate. It's good.
Adam, what are you saying, mate?
Oh, you said the shop name was Coleman's. I had a conversation with someone just last week actually about this because he's a work colleague. He's moving to Australia, and we were talking about the whole COVID thing. But it came up in conversation. Someone in the office spotted an article on them bringing back lockdowns or wanting to, because of I don't know, a resurgence of COVID or something somewhere in China. And a lot of people in the office were like, "Oh, not doing that again, not going through all that again." But I did kind of also just sit there and wonder in the back of my mind. I'm like, yeah, when they start ramping up the old propaganda again,
you will.
Yeah, they're gonna start going for that stuff again.
Mate, I used to like walk into a shopping center when the whole coronavirus bollocks was going on, and there'd be an Indian guy at the front of the desk, and I'd just push my hand at him as I walked past. And then you get into the store and you go where you picked up the shopping trolleys, and there'd be another Indian guy, and there were always Indian guys. And you just say, fuck off, mate, I don't want to listen to you. And you just go and do your shopping. But yesterday, right, one of the reasons this stream got put up so late compared to when I normally do is I ordered a shopping delivery for Woolworths, and the first guy was an Indian, and he wouldn't leave it, all right, because I didn't have a photo ID with my day of birth on.
Oh, this is what you were saying about earlier.
Yeah, I didn't have a photo ID with my day of birth on. I had my pension card, I had my Medicare card, which is the equivalent of the NHS in England. I had my credit card, etc., etc. But they didn't have a date of birth and a photograph on them. So I got hold of the Woolworths, a very nice young girl, let me say. And she said, "Oh, I'll get it redelivered for you, and I'll give you a $15 refund because he just didn't leave it because he was a rude Indian bastard, all right?" So a new guy came who was actually a white guy, who's the only white guy who's ever delivered my Woolworths stuff. And he also wouldn't leave it because I didn't have a photo ID or an ID with my date of birth on. And he said, well, look, I can leave the food, but take the alcohol. And I just said, no, mate, just take it all back. All right. And I wasn't rude to him because he was a nice guy. And he could see how ridiculous it was. Because the situation in Victoria or Australia is if you order alcohol, you have to have something with your date of birth on and a photograph. The thing is, I'm 59 years old. I don't look under 18, you know? I really don't. I wish I did, but I don't. So it's just fucking stupid and insane, right? And if I go into the shop, no one asked me for my ID, you know? It's only
Yeah,
if you order it.
I went to sign up for there's a free gym membership that I can get associated with my workplace, and it's right across the road. And I don't usually use it, but I thought, I'm gonna actually use this, and I had to go over there and I had to sign up. And they wanted photo ID, but the only photo ID I've got is a passport, which I obviously don't carry around with me. And I used to have my ID card, my driver's license with the photo ID on it. But I went out on you could say a right wing kayaking trip, and I lost my wallet in the river like last
That
year.
would be kind of cool. I'd go on a right wing kayaking trip for sure.
It was good fun, but yeah, I lost my wallet in the water, and so I haven't got that card anymore. And I never used to carry it with me anyway, because I rarely ever did take it with me anywhere, because you don't have
Why
to carry
would
it. It's a
you?
legal requirement. Yeah, and I kind of like vexing the police by saying, like, no, you just have to take me at my word.
The thing is, in Britain, we'd never believed in ID cards. We had them in World War II and never ever apart from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I then got a message from Woolworths saying to me, we'll give you $20 off if you come back to Woolworths. Never coming back to Woolworths. God tell you. If I want alcohol, I'll go and buy it myself, and I will not be using Woolworths. It's insane. But yeah, you know what? It's Australia Day, which should be called Civilization Day. When the first fleet arrived in Australia on the 26th of January, 1788, in the whole country, there was not one road, there was not one building, there was nothing. And everything in Australia that has been created since then has been made by Anglo-Celtic Australians.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, there's starting to be a lot of people walking past me now at 10 a.m. I'm in this garden out the front of this place with free Wi-Fi in the library. Is sitting so people don't see me near a dwarf birch tree, and a little girl just came in the garden and walked right past me, and then went back to her family. That's Australia.
I very much hope, mate, you're going to be going to.
I'm going down to the hall. Yeah.
Bodvar, I very much hope that later on you're going to be going to an Australia Day barbecue. I hope.
Well, I'm going to the hall gathering, and then I'm going out to where all the other people are going to be next to the bay here in the ocean front. So there'll probably be sausages for sale. You know, maybe they'll be
cool, man.
So yeah,
cool,
well, I'll let you finish up. Australia for the white man. See you later.
I like Australia. It's a damn good country. It's always been very brave, and it's Anglo-Celtic overwhelmingly. So yeah, absolutely, Bodwell.
And anyone in Melbourne today, Blair Cottrell has organised an event. It's not too late. If you're listening, we can go down. But
yes, I have heard he is. Tim Wilms might even go there, but we'll see. But yeah, go well, Bob. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me on. See you later.
Always welcome. Always welcome. Man, and any final bits? Because we're gonna finish this up just about.
No, not really from me. I mean, whenever the Australian argument comes up and I see people talking about that, I always just post like a picture of on X. I'll post like a picture of that. Is it the Gold Courthouse? That particularly beautiful looking courthouse in Australia.
Yep,
I'll
awesome.
always post that up and I'll be like, yeah, no, Abbo built this, you know. But I do think that if lefties want to call it Invasion Day, I mean that as a name that kind of goes quite hard. Like maybe that wouldn't be quite so bad.
Yeah, fuck them, basically, is what I'd say. But that's just me. All right, guys. As always, we're gonna finish off with a tune.
Well, at his gate each hero stood as the whistle loudly blew. With eyebrows fixed and lips set tight, he'd waited for the cue. You can hear the clicking of the shears as through the wool they glide. See that ringer already turned and on the whip and side. A lot of Lachlan tigers, as plain to see they are, and the ringer goes on driving as he loudly calls for tar. Tar he, you dozy loafer, and quick that tar boy flies. Room here and sweep these locks away, another loudly cries. The scene it is a lively one and ought to be admired. There hasn't been a better board since Jackie Howe expired. Along the board the contractor walks, his face all in a frown. Passing by the ringer says, come on, my lad, keep down. I mean to have those bellies off and top knots too likewise. My eye is quick, so none of your tricks or from me you will fly. My curse on that contractor by flame and day and night. To shear a decent tally here I've tried with all my might. I have a pair of warden panes that are both bright and new. I'll rig them up and let you see what I can really do. For I've shone on the bogan where they shear them by the score. Such a terror as this to clip I've never seen before. A lot of Lachlan tigers, as plain to see they are. And the ringer goes on driving as he loudly calls for tar. The scene it is a lively one and ought to be admired. There hasn't been a better board since Jackie Howe expired.
Well, there you go, guys. That's an Aussie tune. All about guys shearing sheep is what it's basically about. Big time old Australia. Anyway, guys, thank you very much to Bodvar and to Alman for joining me this evening. I wish we'd had more Australians, but I don't know. Australians are funny sometimes. So anyway, yeah, we did our best. Happy Australia, guy. Happy Australia Day. So go on, people.
Yep. Good night, all.